Some people have seen where God has brought you from. You don't really understand it. They don't know your story.
You don't know
The things.
Good evening, GX family, here in the UK and all around the globe. Welcome to Michelle Hemmings Organ Donation Life Stories. For all those who are new to this show, let me just tell you a bit about myself and about the show. So as you all know, my name is Michelle Hemmings and I am part of the famous five who all had transplants within 36 hours. I had a single lung transplant and the others there were 2 heart transplants and 2 double lung transplants. I was sick for about 22 years and I needed oxygen just 5 years before my transplant. And I'm blessed to be here to be able to tell my story and raise awareness for organ donation. Now this show is going to consist of a whole heap of other people and organisations. So you're going to see lots of other people who've had their transplants and have a journey to tell, and other organisations, i.e. like organ donation, blood and transplant, pulmonary hypertension, and a whole heap of other people. Is there anybody out there who's had a transplant? Probably a lung or heart transplant? If there is anyone out there who's had a transplant, please, by all means, put it in the chat box. Right, we got a special guest for tonight. He's eagerly waiting behind the scenes. We have known each other throughout different community events, and he spoke at my event in 2019. I put on a charity and awareness event to raise awareness and to raise donations for Papworth Hospital, where I had my transplant. And this gentleman's name is Tony Kelly.
Hello, Michelle. Nice to see you again. You're looking radiant as ever. Happy belated birthday as well.
Thank you, Tony. It's great to see you again. I haven't seen you in almost, over a year?
Yeah, yes, but thanks for having me on your show. It's
No
a pleasure
problem.
to be here.
Okay, let's get right into the questions. Are you ready for this?
I am indeed.
Okay. Right, Tony, please introduce yourself and tell the listeners a bit about who you are and where you live in the UK.
Hello, listeners and viewers. My name is Tony Kelly, and I live with my family in Birmingham, in England here. British born, but grew up in Jamaica. So at a very early age, back in the early 60s, my parents sent me back to the land of their birth. And if any of you can detect the accent, it's truly Jamaican. Okay? So I grew up in Jamaica. And as a child growing up, while they remained here, my parents remained here in a place called Whitehall, St. Thomas. And as a child growing up, saw relatives of mine who, starting from the top, had strokes, blindness, heart attacks, kidney failure. So I had to go into Kingston on the dialysis machine, and lower limb amputations, what we call chop off feet and toes. And then some also died prematurely, or as we would say in Jamaica, gone too soon. Okay? I used to ask all these relatives of mine, what's the matter with them? And all they would do is tell me, Michelle, they have a touch of sugar.
Sugar, yes, I remember.
There's a little sugar. So fast forward, so I always knew this condition, type 2 diabetes, it's a medical condition, as a touch of sugar. I went to Micro Teachers Training College and taught in the high schools in Kingston. Then fast forward 1979, Michelle, I returned to the land of my birth, i.e. England, came to live in Birmingham, and I've lived in Birmingham ever since. And then 18 years ago, December gone, my wife noticed the 4 key symptoms that I might have type 2 diabetes. T for tired, T for toilet, T for thirsty, and
Mhm.
T for thinner. Tired, toilet, thirsty, thinner. But Michelle, typical man, men don't the doctors. Men are not in touch with their emotions. Men are not in touch with their feelings. I was one of those men. And she kept nagging me. And my wife has heard me talk on a lot of occasions. She said, something's wrong with you. Something's wrong with you. Because Michelle, I would get up 3, 4 times during the night to go to the toilet.
Wow.
And eventually I plucked up courage, went to my doctor. In England, Britain, we say GP, general practitioner or
Mhm.
doctor. They put a sample of urine, early morning sample before you have breakfast, dipped it in, and it came out. Tony, you have glucose or sugar, same thing, in your urine. That's when my type 2 diabetes journey started. And I have been type 2 for 18 years. But one of those, Michelle, who has never taken medication for my type 2 diabetes. Never, ever
Good.
have I taken medication.
Okay.
The last 9 years, various organizations heard of me and said, you need to get out there and go and educate the African, the Caribbean, and the Asian community about how you do it through behavioral changes, managing and controlling it by diet and physical activity. And that's my message for the last 9 years, June coming. I go to all communities, not just African, Caribbean, and Asian, white communities as well, to get the health and well-being message out there in terms of physical activity and diet to keep the complications, which I alluded to at the beginning, to keep them at bay. So having the type 2 diabetes, which runs in my family, so it's hereditary, that's not the issue. It's what do I do to prevent the complications coming my way? And I'm touch wood, fingers crossed, happy to say I am doing the right things because I get a diabetes checkup every year. And I urge everybody listening to go and get your medical checkups yearly. We all have our motor vehicle, our car, and we go and get it MOT tested here in Britain to make sure the brakes are working, and the clutch, and this and that and the other. Our body, Michelle, as you know,
Yes.
is far more important to us than a piece of junk. The car is a piece of junk. And I encourage people, especially men and the women out there, the spouses, the girlfriends, the wives who are listening, drag your men to the GP, the doctor, surgery, the health clinic, the hospital, to go and get their checkups done. It's so important, vital.
Okay. Thank you. Now, the listeners must be thinking, why have I asked you to come on to talk about a bit about diabetes? When I had my transplant, we were told that we may become diabetics. I'm one of them, so I'm a diabetic, and I got the diabetes symptoms. And I thank you for all your tips and advice. So let's go on to number 2. Why is health such an important aspect of your life?
Well, our health is our wealth. You could be a millionaire. You could have won the lottery. You could have had a fortune sent your way or what have you. But if you don't have good health, what's the point of having all of this money or all this affluence or these 3, 4 houses or cars or so on and not be able to enjoy it and go on these nice holidays, etc.? So the starting point is, and Black people need to wake up and smell the coffee and do something about their health. That's why I'm passionate, really passionate, as you yourself know, Michelle. We meet at so many community events. You on the transplant issues and me on the diabetes. You got yours through steroid induced because you
Yes.
were on steroids. That's why your diabetes came your way. Some people, it's to do with they're too overweight or obese or morbidly obese. Some people who are skinny, or in Jamaica, we would say mager. Let's keep it real, can also develop type 2 diabetes. So this whole issue of your health, I have a wife, I have a daughter, I have family, I have friends, etc. I want to be able to, when I'm in my 80s, 90s, God's will, be able to still do the things. I shouldn't then have to think, oh my God, my health's beginning to fail me. And it's important that we eat healthily and do physical activity. So health is my passion. I'm retired now. I worked for 30 plus years in the local government field. And since retirement, this is my journey. This is my passion, getting the message out there. And and you go on and ask some more questions, but that's it in a nutshell: health and
Okay.
well-being.
Before I go on to question 3, please tell our listeners, what do you do in your spare time?
Okay.
You do
Well,
Pilates, you go swimming.
indeed, indeed. Some people might laugh. I go every week, although we're in lockdown and we've just come out of lockdown here back in Britain. But I, for the last how many years, go to a Pilates class every week. I go
Wow.
to a yoga class every week. I go to a badminton class every week. I cannot swim to save my life, although I grew up around the Caribbean Sea in Jamaica, but I go to an aqua aerobics class where you stand in the swimming pool with the water coming up to your navel, your belly button or navel strip, and against the flow of the water with the music from the swimming instructor or the aqua aerobics instructor, I should say, I'm doing the movement. And then I also go to a Zumba class. And Michelle, when I go to a Zumba class, it's 26, 27 women in the Zumba class, and me, sometimes the one degger man. And I just say, well, I am the rose amongst the thorns. Because I am there, having seen all what I told you earlier, the suffering in Jamaica, and I see that here as well, suffering from people here in Britain who are not taking care of their health. I am not joining them. I am not prepared to go down that route. So that is why I go and do all of this physical activity. And apart from those leisure pursuits, I like gardening. We like going to the cinema when we can. We like going to the theater. We like shopping and so on. So lots of other things that I do to keep mind, body, and soul ticking over. Not sitting down the sedentary couch potato lifestyle in front of the 24/7. I urge people to get up, movement, get up and do things. So those are my leisure pursuits.
You're really a fit man, aren't you? Wow. Put us to shame. Okay, right. So what message would you like to give to our community, our listeners who remain hesitant and reluctant about taking the COVID-19 vaccine?
Well, I'm a perfect example. Good question, Michelle, because I and my wife had the first vaccination 8 weeks ago. We're having the second one on Monday. And this business of all the hesitancy and the reluctance, and I get lots and lots of in my phone WhatsApp messages, pure rubbish, pure garbage. Some of these are bright, very bright, intelligent people, and the rubbish they're sending to me, I just delete it. I sit on two very big committees talking about the virus. So I'm speaking to a lot of professionals and consultants and researchers and so on. And the virus itself has killed lots of people worldwide. We know that.
Yes.
The actual injection, the vaccination, whichever model you're going to take, whichever brand you're going to take, as far as I know, has killed relatively very few people. So I'm urging people, for the last 18 years, because I have type 2 diabetes in Britain, I'm encouraged to have what we call the winter flu jab. Every year I have it without fail, because they're saying my resistance with having type 2 diabetes, if I really get flu badly, it can end up me popping my clogs. The same with the vaccine. I have no hesitancy. We were first in the queue, so to speak, when our time came around, when they reached the over 60s, because I am over 60, and we took it. And I'm encouraging people to put this nonsense and stupidness aside about, they want to kill off black people and they want to put chip in us and it cannot change your DNA. Come on, people, wake up and smell the coffee. Your DNA, your metabolism, your genetics is what you're born with. It cannot change that. So I'm urging people to put the foolishness aside. And I actually know some people, elderly people, who secretly, against the advice of their children and grandchildren, have gone and taken the vaccine and said, Tony, you convinced me I must take it. And I've gone and taken it. After I've taken it, I've come back and told my family I have taken the vaccine.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Okay, if you had the ability to change one thing in the world, what would that be?
I know what that would be. We just had the verdict, the guilty verdict on the issues in America with George Floyd. And I would be saying, if one thing I could change, it would be to get rid of all forms of hatred and bigotry, whether it be ageism, whether it be sexism, whether it be racism, whether it be hatred against religions. If we could get people to just begin to understand each other, accept each other for who they are, what they are, and not be so hung up on the color of the skin, how big a person is, how old they are, and so on. That's the one thing I think the world would be a better place. It would almost be utopia. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm talking just Christians. I'm talking everybody of every walk of life. If we could get people to change their hearts and the mindset of people to accept people for who they are and not based on the color of their skin or the color of their eyes or how big or small they are, that for me would make the world a better place. I really do.
Wouldn't it be good if we could just unite as one and get along with each other?
And to people for who they are and not based on any other features that they might have.
I know. Thank you, Tony. What would you say was your worst failure in life, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I've been asked that before, Michelle, and I take the view nobody should dwell on failures. So I am not going to tell the viewers and listeners that, well, this is my worst failure or that one is. I accentuate the positives. I'm into positivity. And yes, we all have shortcomings, failings, and weaknesses in life. And we have failed along the way. But you fall off the bicycle, you brush yourself down, and you get back on and you go on. So you might fail an exam, or you fail to do this or fail to do that. Failure is not disaster. I want your viewers and listeners to understand that hey, it's not going to be the end of the world. When one door closes, another one opens. So failure doesn't really exist in my vocabulary. Although you've asked the question and you have every right to ask it, there's no one failure. I've had lots of failures, but that is not going to make me feel, oh my God, I'm going to go into doom and gloom because I failed this or failed that. You pick yourself up, dust yourself down, and you move on and try and make correct the mistakes or whatever it might have been that caused you to fail in the first place. So you don't repeat it again.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell the listeners, how did you become diabetic free? I would love to know how you did that.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm diabetic free. Let me just rephrase that for you. I still, because it runs in my family, it's hereditary. I still have type 2 diabetes, but I have not reached the stage where some people with type 2 end up on metformin or end up taking insulin. And for the sake of the viewers, let me explain what diabetes is. We all have a 6-inch gland, because I do this training all over the world, a 6-inch gland which is situated behind our belly button. And it produces the hormone insulin. And insulin, the pancreas makes this insulin, which keeps us alive. You can survive without an eye and a leg or an arm. You cannot survive without insulin. So this year is the 100th year, the 100th anniversary since Sir Frederick Banting in Canada and his French student, he's Canadian, and the French student was Charles Best, noticed a meager dog outside. They pumped this man-made or synthetic or artificial insulin into the dog 100 years ago, and the dog started making a marker recovery. That's how insulin was first found. So type 1, where the pancreas packs in all together and doesn't work, that person has to inject insulin into their tummy area 3 or 4 times a day. Or sometimes they wear an insulin pump strapped to their body. That's type 1. Only 10% of people have type 1. 90% of people with diabetes have type 2, which is either runs in the family, hereditary, or it's to do with the overweight, obese, or too fat, or sometimes they might be skinny or meager and still develop it. So the type 2 diabetes, the diabetes is, the insulin is there producing, but not enough or not doing its job properly. So with me now, I eat very healthfully. People seem to think, well, if you have diabetes, well, you're going to cut down on all the sugars, the cream cake and the syrup and the ice cream and so on.
Don't forget the rum cake.
Yes. But what you need to understand, listeners and viewers, all carbohydrates you eat, yam, rice,
Yes.
bread, all starchy food that you eat breaks down into your body into glucose or sugar. So you need to bear that in mind and cut down on those. Less is more, smaller portion sizes, and go for more fresh fruits and vegetables. And that's what I do. And along with, because I'm constantly burning up the calories by making sure I'm doing all the physical activity and fast-paced walking and so on, that makes me not put on added weight. I just went last week down to for my diabetes review, and she said, "You haven't put on a stone in weight or a pound in weight or an ounce in weight since you came here last year." I said, "Because I'm doing a lot of physical activity, gardening, fast-paced walking. I'm doing all the things I mentioned earlier, climbing the stairs instead of taking the lift. When I go to the supermarket, I park the car way down yonder. That's what I'm encouraging people to do. Don't use a travelator in the supermarket. Use the stairs. Your feet were made for walking, Michelle, not the travelator or the elevator or the escalator. Do we have elevators and escalators in our home? No, we don't. So why, when we're going to these places, we think we have to, it's a height of laziness. We need to walk more. Movement is what I'm about.
Definitely. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Can you tell me what are your hopes for the future?
Well, my hopes for the future. Our daughter is getting married later this year. So one of my hopes is to be a grandfather along with my wife. So grandparents, that's one of the hopes. Another hope is that the world can become a better place. It's not the world that's the problem. It's some of the people within the world. People say, "Oh, the world is upside down." There's nothing wrong with the world. It's some of the people who are in the world who need to change their whole ethos, their whole way of life, and develop a more caring, compassionate humanitarian, which is why after 30 plus years of doing government work, I thought, you know what? It's payback time now. So this is my payback to the communities to get people, African, Caribbean, Asian, white people to say, "Hey, look at your body, look at your health, look at your well-being." Because over here, but they've been back since 1979, 42 years. And over the years, I've been to a lot of funerals. And Michelle, I see people dying in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And I do ask the question, what's killed so-and-so that's in that coffin or that casket? And I keep on hearing, and you need to hear this loud and clear. In 2019, they can look it up on the International Diabetes Federation website. Those are the last set of stats we have. In 2019, 4.2 million people worldwide, globally, died from type 2 diabetes. It's not something to be messed with. Some people just, "Oh, it's a touch of sugar," and they trivialize it and minimize it. Come on, I'm begging you. Because I've been on BBC television, and the woman started by asking me the question, "So, Tony, you're a diabetes sufferer." And I just put myself right up and I say, "Excuse me? No, I'm not a diabetes sufferer. I am living with this medical condition. I'm managing and controlling it. It is not managing and controlling me. I saw the suffering in Jamaica, in Whitehall, St. Thomas, Jamaica, but I'm not going there. So I'm not a diabetes sufferer. Never call me a diabetes sufferer."
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Just got one more question for you.
Yes, indeed.
How have you and your family coped during this pandemic? And any tips or any advice you would like to give?
Right. Well, first start, I ring each week a lot of elderly people on a list. And one woman in her 80s said to me that she's depressed. I said, "Why are you depressed?" This was back in March, April, when it just came in and we were all in lockdown. And she said to me, "Oh, she gets up and she watches the news 24/7. Gentle people, stop doing that. You must watch one main broadcast. What you need to do is find whether hello, it ain't half hot man, keeping up appearances, Faulty Towers, the Oliver Samuels comedies. There's so many comedies out there on internet, YouTube, this, that, and that. Laughter is the best medicine. Please, I beg you, remember that. Have your belly full of laugh. That for me is one tip. Do more physical activity. Even if the gyms are closed, walk up and down the stairs, do your gardening, do the vacuum cleaning, just stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, hide the remote control. I beg people to do. And each time you have to change the channel, instead of the bip, 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 go up, change the channel, and come back and sit down. And that's the sort of thing. We ourselves, we've done a lot of in the comfort of our home, a lot of Zumba, and you've gone on to all the sites where they have the and we've ate healthfully. And also, please, I beg people drink a lot more water.
Yes.
Water is meant to flush the kidneys, the poisons and toxins from out of your body. That's the aim of why you have kidneys in your body. So that's a tip to people. Cut down on the sugary foods and stuff. On the carbohydrates is another one. Go for the fresh food. And you can get all the vegetables now. The kale, the callaloo, the spinach, the tomatoes, the radish, the beetroot, the Brussels sprouts, the beans. They're all there. Those are things that I would be wanting people to eat more of.
Thank you, Tony.
You're
Now
welcome.
we're really coming towards the end, and I would just like to encourage any viewers out there who would like to put any messages or questions in the chat box, and we will try our best to try and answer them for you. But Tony, I'm gonna have to say it has been a pleasure having you on my show, and I'd like to say a big thank you, and a big thank you to you and all the questions and answers you answered.
All right. And can I just say, in case people haven't seen what's in the chat, if anybody, no matter what part of the world they are, want to get hold of me to do the full diabetes presentation, officially approved by the National Health Service Clinical Commissioning Group that I work for as a volunteer, all you need to do is drop me a line. The email's there, TonyKellyDiabetes@hotmail.com. It's free. It's not costing anybody, no matter what part of the globe you are. People get in touch with me from Trinidad and from Africa and from Florida and from Jamaica. And I come and do the presentation for you. But thanks so much for doing the show. And you stay from well.
Okay, I'll just write your contact details. But thank you for mentioning this. And I hope you all enjoyed the interview with Tony Kelly. And I thank you all for watching Michelle Hemmings Organ Donation Life Stories. I just want to give God the glory and just thank our special guests. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you, guys, and thank you for listening. Bye.
It's a pleasure. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Some people have seen where God has brought you from. You don't really understand it. They don't know your story.